Hello and welcome into the deck tech of this super sweet historic deck that me and my teammates from Team Handshake played at the historic qualifier weekend just this past weekend here on Arena. And this is a deck that nobody else in the event was playing, as far as we know. And was mostly the brainchild of Tristan Wilderoo, who was also playing in the World Championship, one of the great new players, and who spent a lot of time trying out ominous traveler decks in Alchemy and so on, and therefore he tried to port it over to Historic, see if it could work, and it definitely could. So we're the 6 of us on the team are playing the deck in the qualifier here, and we're pretty excited about this. This video will be kind of a two-parter. As you can see, I'll probably figure out here, when you just look at this deck, it looks like it has some regular red-black mid-range sacrifice vibes, but no real good creatures win cons. It's because there is a combo here. It's actually basically an infinite combo. But it won't be very obvious just from if you don't know the cards, it makes sense that you can't really see the combo. So I'll have, and the combo is kind of convoluted, especially if I want to go into all the details about how to perform it, if one of you want to pick the deck up. So I'm saving that for a different video. There'll be another video which will explain, have the demonstration of the combo, and here I'll just very briefly mention what it actually does. I'll also make sure to highlight the alchemy cards involved, because I assume that especially the alchemy cards are the ones that most of you are not going to be very familiar with. So that's how we're gonna do it. So here I'm just going to explain the card choices and the specific deck, this way this deck was built to support the combo. But if you're just interested in figuring out how in the world this deck works, you can check out the demonstration of the combo, or you can just head straight into the gameplay and see it play out and maybe figure it out from there. So, what's going on in this deck? Well, briefly, the main thing here is that we are running Goblin Trapfinder. So, it's a 1/1 that has a dice trigger. When it dies, you seek a creature card. Seek means draw a random one from your deck. So you draw a random creature card with mana value 3 or less from your deck into your hand. And then in your hand, it gains a perpetual ability. Perpetual means it's kind of like a sticker. No matter where the card goes, those abilities stays on it. So that means you can give abilities to cards in hand, and if they die and go to the graveyard and you bring them back, they retain the abilities. If they're shuffled into the deck and you redraw them, at some point you might draw a card that oh, that's the one that had the perpetual ability. That's something that only works in online games. That's what Perpetual does. And so, when this one dies, you draw a cheap creature from your deck, and Trapfinder says it's even cheaper, it's 2 mana cheaper, and it also gains haste, but you'll have to sacrifice that creature at end of turn. So, essentially, it doesn't really grant you a creature, it just grants you a creature for 1 turn when it dies. That's the extra effect here. Well, we built our deck in a way where there's only 3 different creatures that cost 3 or less. There's Trapfinder itself, and if you hit that, that's alright, then you can just go again. Because this is all about, triggering the Trapfinder here. Then you can hit Bergi, God of Storytelling. Whenever you cast a spell, you add red mana. And then it has another ability about boasting that is completely irrelevant. The main thing is just 3 mana, 3/3. Whenever you cast a spell, you gain 1 mana. It also has a backside of the horn, which is very relevant in this deck, but I'll get back to that. So, Trapfinder, you can hit Bergi. That's not ideal, but Bergi is part of your combo, so it is actually kind of nice that if you haven't already drawn her, the Trapfinder can sometimes help you find it. The thing you do want to hit the most is this card, Ominous Traveler. This one is a doozy to explain. So as you can see, it's a 2 colorless 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, you... Oh. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Arena. When Ominous Traveler enters the battlefield, you draft a card from its spellbook. What does that mean? Well, Ominous Traveler has a spellbook of just a selection of different vampires, zombies, werewolves, and spirits, all from like, you know, Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow. And so it has a selection of these 15 specific here. And so when it comes into play, the game will show you 3 of those 15, and you get to pick 1 of those. That card goes in your hand, and then you can cast it, like no matter which colors it costs, just it's gonna be colorless. And when you cast the spell you get from Traveler, the Traveler will jump back into your hand, so you can go again later. So it's kind of like a really slow, like, card advantage engine that like creates kind of like random, you know, like 2/2s or whatever. That's like, you know, the way the card is intended. What we're doing here, trying to hit it with Trapfinder, that reduces it to 0 mana. And once it's 0 mana, and you have a Berkey out, well, whenever you cast a Traveler and hit something, you can like, kind of like keep replaying it because you're going to keep getting the mana back. The combo is a little bit more convoluted than that, but it's basically the deal here. So we're trying to like hit a Trapfinder and then have a Berkey out, and we can just keep spamming the Traveler until we win. Eventually you'll end up like hitting, you know, some dominating vampires, which can give like steal the opponent's blockers, or give haste to your own things. So eventually you'll just be able to attack for lethal the turn you do this. And that's all fun and games. Okay, so that sounds really convoluted, right? Like we not only like don't even like want to just draw the Traveler, we want to specifically hit it off a Trapfinder, which is random, right? Like it is still a random thing it hits. And you can't control when that happens. Plus, so you still need to have drawn the Trapfinder, and you also need to find a Berkey. But once all the pieces combine, like the deck just goes off. This can happen like as early as turn 3, even technically turn 2, but not really. But what makes this deck good is that the combo takes up so few actual slots that you can devote so much of your deck to interaction and a grind ability. So this deck plays really well like plan B, and it often does. Like it's not that often that you actually have to combo by like turn 4. It doesn't happen too often, but it can happen. But mostly it's like you're just like, but you have the ability to slow the opponent down, and if you're disrupted, you have a lot of redundancy. So that's what we're trying to go for here. Okay, so the main thing here is that we want to have a Trapfinder, and then we want to be able to have it die. Sometimes you can just jump block with it, but the most efficient way is, of course, to sacrifice it to some things. In the Alchemy version, you have Village Rites and Deadly Dispute, cards that you all probably know and love, which obviously work well with the Trapfinder. But in Historic, you get like an incredible extra addition, which is the Phyrexian Tower. This card is just nuts in this deck. Like, first of all, like getting that extra mana boost can definitely be very helpful. Playing like turn 1 Trapfinder into turn 2 Berkey, sacrificing the Trapfinder is like one of the best draws. But also just having like a sacrifice outlet that won't be stranded in your hand. See, that's the issue, right? We have to play enough sacrifice outlets so that we can consistently trigger the Trapfinder. But what happens if you don't draw the Trapfinder? You just sit there with all these Village Rites and Disputes in your hand. And since the way we designed our deck, we don't want that many cheap creatures around. So we actually often don't have things to sacrifice. Ominous Traveler, when you draw it naturally, it can help. It's not a very good, but it's like, you know, 2 mana 1/1, and then like you get something random in your hand, and you can like sacrifice the Traveler if you like don't have time to go for the full value train. So that kind of helps. But we kind of need to like add something else that's good to sacrifice, but isn't a creature. We used to have like Unlucky Witness in the deck earlier, but it was just ended up being like too often too bad that like you would keep hitting it with Trapfinder, and then like that would just like decrease the chance for you to combo. So in the end, we decided that the best thing to do here is just run a bunch of Claim the Firstborn. Now this strategy we've also know already. You steal the creature and you sacrifice it. Great strategy, has worked in Historic too. And that's essentially what we're trying to do here. Whenever you don't have Trapfinder, you can at least like, you know, use this as a piece of interaction. And turn all your sacrifice outlets into like things that are both card advantage and interaction. So that's all well and good. The fact that like the combo takes up so few slots also means that we can run like quite a few, you know, pieces of interaction, like a bunch of discard spells. We have like even more on the sideboard. And like Fatal Pushes. Of course, Fatal Push is incredible in this deck because it's so easy to enable the Revolt part with all the sacrificing and the treasure and so on. You even have Bone Charge, which is like an extra, like additional removal spell. It's kind of nice to be able to hit something big or be able to like kill a Planeswalker. Just nice to have that out in your deck. Plus, it's an extra way to sacrifice your Trapfinder or the thing you steal from Claim if you need to. So, as with all sacrifice decks, like you kind of need to like hit the right mix of like sacrifice fodder and sacrifice outlets. Then we have some of the grindy cards here. One of them I want to highlight here is Echoing Return. That's another card that, like, you know, is historic specific. It was in Modern Horizons 2. Obviously sees no play in Modern, but actually, like, works quite well in this deck. The main reason is that quite often with your Trapfinder, when you sacrifice it, you'll hit another Trapfinder. And then, like, you play that and you sacrifice that. Actually, like, the Trapfinder you hit will die at end of turn, because that's what the Trapfinder says, right? So you'll, you don't even need a sack outlet for the second one. And very easy for you to like end up with multiple Trapfinders in your deck. Or maybe like, you know, you had a Berkey but the opponent like fault seized it or whatever, and like now you lost your combo piece. So having this Echoing Return is just a super cheap way to regrow something, but also pretty often being able to regrow multiple Trapfinders makes it so much more likely that you'll end up hitting the Traveler. Because if you can, like, you know, not just sacrifice 2 Trapfinders, but like end up sacrificing like 4 because you recur them and like sacrifice them again, at some point you will hit a Traveler. So we're kind of like trying to go for quantity here in terms of the Trapfinders. Just also like with all the card draw here and so on, it's pretty easy to like rip through your deck and you'll eventually find the Trapfinders. Another piece of another way to like recur stuff is the Colligan's Command, which like plays pretty dual role. The deck did not start out with 2 Colligan's Command main. We actually like started out with 0. We had like 1 in the sideboard before it was pretty good, so we started adding more. Then we kind of realized as we got closer to the tournament and like played day 1 here, that that like the affinity decks and the red-black mid-range decks seem to be by far the most popular decks. And Colligan's Command is kind of great against both of those. You also expect to see a little bit of control maybe. Colligan's Command is great there too. So we ended up just saying, well, I mean, we probably should just play 2 copies of this main deck. So that's what we end up doing here. Just like super versatile card that also adds to your resiliency. There's also another thing with these like return effects is that your Ominous Traveler, if you hit one that's like 0 cost, the opponent can still interact with your combo. Maybe they can like fault seize you and they take away the 0 cost Traveler, or they have a fatal push it already when you're trying to go for the combo. So now you will have your combo piece in the graveyard, but as it's perpetual, it still keeps that 0 cost. So as long as because you have all these ways to like regrow a creature, you can actually like get back the Traveler. And we not just have these 3 spells, we're also including 2 copies of Takenuma. There's pretty rarely you see 2 copies of this specific legendary land. Like having, you know, multiple copies of good legendary lands, we've seen that before, it's not that uncommon, but when we added a 23rd land to the deck, it made a lot of sense to add that as a second Takenuma. We do have some legends in the deck, and it just matters so much. Like, sometimes all you need for the combo, like when you have a Berkey out, you have enough mana, the only thing you really need is just a 0 cost Traveler, and having the ability to draw into a land that enables you to go off in spots like that when you've like lost your combo piece just matters so much. Other than that, there's not much to say about the mana base. Just highlighting again that Friction Tower is like completely nuts. Wish I could play more, but only 23 lands, so it's kind of like tough to squeeze in more of those, as it is a legendary and it is colorless. But whenever you draw this card, like your deck just like hums at a much better rate, because all of a sudden like your claim the first ones are like, you know, never dead in your hand. You'll always have a sack outlet. It's just an incredible card. Now the last one in the main deck here that I should talk about is Prosper. Prosper Tomebound. So this is another one. It's not an alchemy card. It's actually like a card from Baldur's Gate, and is printed in paper, but so it doesn't have like these weird abilities, but it does have a pretty nice ability. At the beginning of your end step, you exile the top card of your library, and then you can play it until the end of your next turn. Classic red ability with the extra twist here that like this happens in the end step. So like even if they kill Prosper on their turn, you still have access to the card. Whenever you play a card from exile, you create a treasure token. Okay, so that's cool. Whenever like Prosper plays a card from his ability, yeah, you get a little bit of extra mana. Well, the main thing here of like why this is really good. First of all, like Prosper is just like a super nice like card advantage engine. It's just a nice extra ability to have to be able to grind when you need to do that. The 1/4 Death Touch body is like a good blocker too. And also, like, he costs 4 mana. And Goblin Trapfinder only hits things that cost 3 or less. So he's safe. He doesn't dilute the combo. The main thing here... Okay, thank you, Arena. The main thing here is that the backside of Berkey, the Harnfell, Horn of Bounty here, is... discard a card. It's 5 mana artifact here. And has the ability you can discard a card to exile this up to a card to your library. You can play them until end of turn. It happens a lot in this deck that you end up playing the Horn. Partly because, like, you know, you only need 1 Berkey to go off. Sometimes you're like trying to hold them so like you don't expose them to removal. So you pretty frequently end up with like additional Berkeys you don't really need. Maybe you hit some of Trapfinder, and like that copy hit of Trapfinder, that's the 1 mana Berkey. You can just save that for the combo turn. The other Berkey you had in hand already, use that for the Horn. And if you have, like, the Horn by itself, it's just a pretty nice card advantage engine, right? You slam it, the opponent often can't interact with it, and then like you can like start like, you know, chucking like your bad cards away. If you have like a Claim the Firstborn stuck in hand that you can't use, you can just like throw that away, throw some lands away. You can like start digging for like more pieces of, more combo pieces, like more Trap Finders, more Sack Outlets, whatever you need. You can kind of dig for it. However, if you have the Horn of Bounty with Prosper, things start to go kind of nuts. Because Prosper triggers whenever you play anything from exile. That also includes the cards from the Horn. So, like any 1 mana thing you hit here, and if you note our curve, most of the things cost 1 mana, it'll just be free with Prosper. Now, if you assemble the full combo, where you have the front side of Berkey and the Horn in play, as well as Prosper, all of a sudden, like, you start just like drawing your entire deck. Because you can discard some cards, right? And like you also have Gigantha that you can like, you know, put in your hand. Then you'll hit some things. You hit like a Thoughtseize. That's generating you 1 mana. Because like Berkey generates a mana and Prosper generates treasure. And then like all these like 1 mana things start generating your mana. Then you have like your card draw effects. We can like sacrifice something, put 2 more cards in your hand. But those 2 cards actually turn into 4 cards. Because you discard them to the Horn. And then you can just like keep going this way. Where, yeah, you just like generate like massive amount of advantage. And usually just you find the combo kill that turn where you do that. It's quite a sight to behold. Check out the games. It definitely happens sometimes. Yeah, it is very cool. I'll quickly go on the sideboard here. We definitely have like, you know, extra copies of like some of the main deck cards, like, you know, Echoing Return and grinding matchups, and like, you know, discard spells and against control and such. Extra bone shards to deal with stuff like Teferi. Against control deck, or like whenever you just need an extra removal spell. Claim the Firstborn, like again, you know, you can't really main deck 4 because not all like decks are creature decks that really care about it, even though most decks historic right now are. So we're saving the 4th claim for the sideboard. We have a few, we have this like Grizzly Sigil that you might recognize from Streets of New Capenna Limited, which is a removal spell that has Casualty 1, and the casualty part here is really important, right? Because that means Grizzly Sigil is a sack outlet, but instead of being a sack outlet that like just draws your cards, it's a sack outlet that can like destroy multiple creatures if they have one toughness creatures, or at least like destroy 1 bigger thing and gain you 4 life. Very good in some creature matchups when you use like Claim the Firstborn to steal their thing, and then use Grizzly Sigil to like blow up 2 more things. The same thing with Shattering Finale. This is an alchemy card. It's like very similar, right? Like you sacrifice something and give 2 things -3 toughness. So that one is kind of perfect for that. We have, you know, some Soul Guard Lanterns for some graveyard hate, in case you're like running into Phoenix and such. We have Bioforce, like the artifacts deck I said were like, you know, really were really popular. And no, we did find out that like Kolaghan's Command is often like, you know, quite good against them too. So we decided to like hedge more towards Kolaghan's Command. And then we have a Croxa, which is like the last bit of sideboard check here. Good against like the grinding matchups too, like, you know, red black mid range or the control decks. And what's really nice here is that this is actually a thing you can hit off Trapfinder, which at first sight might seem like a downside. But if you hit Croxa off Trapfinder, Croxa has haste. So you can just like escape it, and it's really easy to escape in this deck. You just like fill your graveyard super quickly. You escape it, and then like immediately attack with it as well. Then it dies end of turn, but that might be fine because you can just escape it again next turn and just get 2 more triggers. So yeah, Croxa is kind of neat in this deck. Anyway, seems like I've hit 20 minutes, but I've also like gone over like everything that's cool about this deck. So the last thing I'll mention actually is right now Brothers War is coming out. That means the they have these like, like old style blueprint artifacts that are like included in the packs, which are gonna be played in limited and not gonna be legal in standard, but are gonna be legal in historic. They include a bunch of hits like Wormcall Engine, like Migglesant Lathis, and a bunch of nonsense. The historic might change a lot, maybe this deck won't even be playable. If you're picking it up, consider adding some Ashnod's Altar to the deck. 3-mana artifact, you can sacrifice a creature to add 2 colorless mana to your pool. You can probably add like, 3 copies of that card to your deck. It's like an extra sack outlet for your Trapfinder and your claims. But it's also a combo piece. If you have Bergie and a just a regular Traveler, you can just like sacrifice every creature that you hit off Traveler, and that's the way you can like generate mana. And it kind of like does a similar thing. We're not quite yet sure like if you're gonna be able to combo in time with that combo, but it seems like it should be feasible to at least do something relevant. So yeah, Ashnod's Altar. Look out for that. Maybe like you can shave like some Color Guns Command, or like you're gonna try to, or whatever you like, kind of want to catch. Experiment with that. But that's like the last bit of advice I'll give, is that that's something you could look to add to the deck. Anyways, check out the combo demonstration if you're still very confused about how this works. You're probably not very confused at this point, but if you actually want to pick up the deck, there's a lot of like nuance about how to combo that you might need to learn, so you can check that out. If you're don't care about that, you can just head straight into the games and watch how this beauty actually plays out. See ya.